Hello, everyone. It's Michael Jaco with Unleashing Intuition Secrets. So while we wait on Juan, he's usually fashionably late. While we wait on him, I've been trying to put something in the chat. Won't let me put it in there. It has to do with the Marines. While we wait on him, I've been trying to put something in the chat. Has something to do with the Marines. All right. So we know that 700 Marines were put into the LA situation, sent to there. Now, that's Marines, as you guys probably know, I've talked about Marines, how extremely efficient they are. They don't need any other force. They don't need the Navy. The Navy, they use them for transportation. They get dropped off, but that's about it. And then they're on their own. They have their own air wing. Pretty much, they're everything. So once they come in to a situation, if the enemy engages them, they close with the enemy and destroy the enemy. There's no other fighting force in the world like the Marine Corps. So President Trump sending the Marines there early on is a 5D chess move, right? We're in a multidimensional war right now, and Trump has been playing this to perfection. So sending the Marines in early on, you have the police force, then you have them backed up with the National Guard, and now you have the National Guard backed up with the Marines. So it's basically F around and find out at this point. So what is the deep state going to do now? Are they going to try and play tough guy? It's not going to work out for them. All right, I got Juan coming in. I'm gonna let him get a little situated here, and then we'll bring him in. Okay, here we go. Juan, how you doing?
Hey there, bro. How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
I'm not getting any audio here. Let's see if I got. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, I got you clear.
I'm not hearing you.
Juanito, come in, Juanito. So play with the sound. Communication, in the military, communication was always a tough thing. And we're in a military situation here, so Juan is always on.
You. I might have to pop out, pop back in. Maybe I've got something.
Yeah, try that. He's not hearing me say that, so. So how about now? You got anything? Juanito, come in, Juanito. I get you 5x5, but I guess nothing on your end, so. Yeah, he's gonna try and pop back in. So, hopefully we get this in. There's some other things I can do on my end that might help it out, which I won't say. So I'm already trying to reboot. That's right, Lisa. We're going to reboot Juan, and hopefully he comes back in stronger in 5x5 this time. So, like I was saying with the Marines, having the Marines, situated right now is basically sending a message to the deep state, because I think they were. President Trump had told the deep state governor and the communist mayor of Los Angeles that you guys, if I hadn't sent anybody in, they would have destroyed LA, and I think they would have. So by him pushing the National Guard very early on, it caught the deep state off guard, and he went a step further and pushed the Marines. So like I said, the Marines are a force that when you send them in, they close with the enemy and destroy. right? So if anything starts to get really crazy, the Marines are going to move fast and move hard. How about now? You got me now, Juan?
Grab the door, grab you. Okay.
All right, you're a little broken right now. How about now? Maybe Juan's getting to a place where he can, communicate better. Audio. How's audio now, Juan?
Hey.
Hey, I heard you on. I heard my voice
me?
on your end, so that's good.
Yeah, I don't know what the issue was. I went out again. I noticed I had my Bluetooth on, but this car doesn't connect to it normally, so it might have been my end.
I could have been over here. I had a different system because they tried to sabotage us. You don't know it, but they sabotaged us last time. You kept talking, and it was funny because you were still on. I got knocked out, and I came back in on another system, and I came back up, and you're just talking away, and I'm like, okay, it worked out good.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I went out, I got coffee, I caught the bus, we came back. He was still talking.
You're still talking.
Yeah, it was like we never left. Hey, how you doing? Oh my gosh. I have my granddaughter in the car. We're going to drop her off on the way, but she's being really cooperative, so nobody will even know that we dropped my granddaughter off with grandma.
Ah,
so
how sweet.
Very nice. Yeah, she's very fun. So I don't know how it did it, but my phone offered me an option to change the picture on the phone all the time out of the blue last night. And it was a picture of my granddaughter. It was kind of a funny picture, and I went ahead and changed it. I've had my Jaguar on my cover for, I don't know, probably 5-6 years. So I keep looking for my phone. They're like, oh no, that's fine now.
Yeah, so I was before the show, before you came on, I was talking about how there's kind of like a 5D chess move with Trump moving the Marines into the LA situation.
Oh yeah. Yep. Well, and of course, the situation with where Trump's at is that he's been anticipating this all the way along. The people behind Trump, nobody was under any illusions with the type of rhetoric that Trump's been putting out during all of the campaign over the last several years, that this was going to come off without any pushback. So anybody that thinks that they're just catching Trump by surprise, he had no idea. No, they've been anticipating this for a very long time. I'd say they're several moves ahead of the riffraff in how this is going to go. So
Absolutely.
and look, it's the center point of much of his policy, of everything that he's done. We're going to get rid of people that aren't here legally, and the ones that want to come back and have to come through the front door, follow the process, and we're going to sift out. We had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people that were released from prisons for very serious crimes in countries all over the world, and they were pushed on us. And so there's a lot of people that do want to come back, and that we're not adversarial to coming back, but they're all sifted in together. So everybody's got to leave, and then come back through the front door, and that's the way it is.
Yeah, I think the smart people are taking that option, and they'll probably be welcome back. But those that don't, they're going to get the door. But I mean, Mike Johnson was talking about 1 million a year. We got like 20 million that come in over the last 4 years. It's tough.
Well, the real numbers, if you go back since Reagan to today, and remember, they played a game with us. The Democrats played a game and said they were just going to cut it off if we just let the ones that were already here become citizens without having to go through all the drama. Well, the reality is that we never got what to Reagan there. And so now everybody has to go back out, and then we can filter the ones that come back in. And that's the difference here. I think we'll find that, a lot of these, I had a person that does my body work on my vehicles. I had no idea he was an illegal. He'd been here for 20 plus years. And find out, hey, you got to come grab your car. We're moving back to Mexico. And all of his family, like 21 family members and him, are moving back to Mexico. And so that what happened in the course of that was that he said the reason he wanted to take them all back to Mexico is so they could come back legally. He had kids in college. He had, grade school kids in the extended family. And so what the deal is that if they get shipped out by ICE, they can't come back. If they've been deported, they don't get to come back. So what he was doing was going ahead and getting them out legally, taking them out under their own power. And then he was going to go ahead and much of the family does want to come back, but they'll come back through the front door. I think that was, pretty smart on his part. He does want the kids to come back. But the other side of the coin is he's been maintaining a pretty good sized farm in Mexico with other family members, almost 400 acres. And so with the money he was making here and stuffing away down in Mexico, he has a retirement plan, and it's to live in Mexico, not to live in the U.S. But the kids and the grandkids, if they get deported, it could really mess up their lives. And we're not adversarial. We want the immigrants, but we have to be able to sift out the ones that are not, we don't want here in our country, the murderers and the rapists and like that. And the people that are just coming here to suck off the benefits. And so what part of the deal is that if you look at the ones that had to be, that were picked up the other day there in California, they were a pretty nasty group of people. Look at the police records of the ones that the ICE picked up that this whole thing started over. They were not people that are the right folks to be here in the United States.
Yeah, definitely. Cartel types, money laundering. That was some of the wordage that we heard. So we've seen a lot of this. We had Sean Taylor on that talked about that through the money laundering, through mortgage fraud to the Democrat Party, and now we're seeing the same thing with the cartels doing it. So it's being exposed, and by exposing it like that, we can prevent, the kinetic activity, I believe, that they were hoping for. So while Juan drops off his granddaughter, so it's kind of
I'm there.
Kind of funny to think of you as a grandpa.
Yeah, I have a little person that I was dropping off for daycare today. So it was fun to have some time with a little person over the last day or so. I don't get often to hang out, so it was kind of fun to get to hang out for a few minutes.
That's beautiful.
So
good job.
Anyway. The one thing that's actually really important with what's going on with Trump right now and with the people, threatening to riot and cause all the drama, we still have other business as a country that we have to do. There was, of course, we have the big parade there in D.C. There was all sorts of preparations going on for a meeting with a delegation out of Africa. The president of Congo and others that were going to meet with the president on Sunday. But with the threats to riot and all the drama and all that, that had to be pushed off. And I was scheduled to conduct a pre-meeting briefing with them and prep them for this meeting at the White House. But, with these kinds of issues coming up here in the country, it's going to distract us from a few other things. You got stuff blowing up with Russia, Ukraine. None of this happens in a vacuum. And the desire to cause disruption across the country in all these different cities does impact the way that our politicians can operate and focus through the summer period. Usually 4th of July, they're out meeting with constituents and things like that, going to all the parades. The threats to blow this up right now do cause a lot of distraction for us, that it comes at a critical moment. Remember, they spent all 4 years trying to interrupt the president's first term with lawfare, with Russia, things like that. And now the intent is to disrupt the country based on the immigration situation. However, especially for Americans, I think they need to understand that if you're an American and you want to go participate in the protests, that may sound all well and good. But if you get picked up, and let's say that there's violence that somebody else starts, that you didn't have anything to do with starting it necessarily, but you're caught in the melee, you could very easily get picked up. And some of the sentences for this, it's like being in the getaway car for the bank robber. And you weren't in the bank, somebody gets killed or hurt. If you were a facilitator, you're going to get caught up with the rest of it. And some of these sentences, Tulsi Gabbard was talking about the other day, these sentences that are mandatory in federal crimes, 5 years is like a starting place. So, a lot of young people get into something like this. It's all fun and cool and interesting and like that. It can go out of control very, very quickly. And the people at the top of this have a lot on the line. And, I'll give you an example in LA. You think you're just showing up, the mayor's on your side, the governor's on your side. One of the things that's going to come out, I believe, said for legal purposes, over the next many months and year or two, is that Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, she spent much of her life as an adult on the payroll of CIA. Those trips to go see Fidel Castro and Raul Castro in Cuba with their great big huge speeches were not done in a vacuum, creating an illusion. And that you end up as the mayor of one of the largest cities in the largest county in America. Somebody targeted her for that career to do things that they wanted done. So this didn't just happen in a vacuum. And you think that she's all on your side? Somebody's playing a game. Remember, all this pushback against Trump over and over and over again, much of it coming from inside 3-letter agencies where somebody has planted people to obtain a certain objective, Marxist objective. And you could get caught up in something that's way outside what you want to be involved in.
Yeah. So does that lead us to believe, or maybe correlate, the CIA is also paying Castro, or is it something else?
Well, that we have people that become high profile that are tied up in some of these communications and events and like that. I go back to Stephen there, Benghazi. Stevens was doing this ambassador stuff over at the State Department, but the reality is that he was also parallel helping coordinate one of the largest CIA operations in American history, which was this step leading to a civil war supposedly in Syria. And they were coordinating the arms transfers through Libya. And something bigger than the running operations, Fast and Furious, that we had going on the Mexican border. Many of the same people were involved in a gun running operation that was hundreds of times larger, going through Libya, and then and looting all of Gaddafi's arms caches, and then shipping the arms. You know, a lot of stuff had been there for quite a long time to be serviced, so they had a couple of warehouses that the Saudis were running there in Libya, and they were refurbishing new batteries, cleaning, etc., weapons that were in Gaddafi's arms warehouses, and shipping it up to Lebanon, Jordan, and Turkey to UN sites there that they were pre-staging arms to go into Syria to help a civil war.
Incredible, Juan.
So
I was there in Libya, and I knew about that to a certain extent. You know a lot more, obviously, but I was on the ground, and I found that kind of stuff out. Your intel's impeccable. Good job.
Well, and because I had done stuff related to Libya back to when Saif Gaddafi had decided that he didn't want anything to do with the aftermath of 9/11. If you remember Reagan, back when he was in office, there was some kids killed, soldiers killed up in Europe. And so it was determined that it was Gaddafi, or the terrorists came out of Gaddafi that did that. And so Reagan bombed Tripoli. And when he did, he bombed one of the tents where Gaddafi was supposedly at, and there was a young child that was killed. Well, it was a half sister to Saif Gaddafi. One of Gaddafi's sons, his oldest son. And he made a huge stink with his dad after 9/11 to make sure that they didn't get confused with the rest of what was happening in our response to 9/11. And they had nuclear manufacturing tools that they'd gotten from Pakistan. And so they made a communication with our White House and with CIA, and gave all the information about what they had with the weapons that came in from, or the systems that came in from Pakistan. And then eventually in 2004, they put all of the materials out on a runway in eastern Libya, and sat there for quite a few days until the Russians finally sent transport down and picked it all up and took it out of the country. And from that point on, Libya continued to give intel to our intelligence services on the movements of all of the supposed hijackers and their families and other terrorists. And they were working with us when the whole Libya thing began during the Arab Spring period. We knew that something was about to happen. We've been watching the intel on that for several months, and everybody knew that Egypt was going to blow up. The understanding in the background was that Libya was going to blow up first. I think most everybody that was kind of familiar with what was going on was pretty shocked when it ended up being Tunisia next door with a supposed fruit vendor. And then it spread from Tunisia into the other countries because it was expected to be Libya. The reality is that Gaddafi and his son Saif and others were cooperating with the U.S. That's why it was so Putin warned Saif to tell his dad that not because they're uh, um, uh, betrayed. And Safe was arguing, no, they're not gonna do that, and the rest was history, because of Hillary and that crowd. In fact, they needed
Right.
Libya for this staging area for the war up in Syria. You know, we would be in a full-fledged war up in Syria had Hillary Clinton won the campaign. So
Yeah.
we
And the people
dodged a
there in
lot of
Libya
bullets.
were totally fooled. They thought that, getting rid of Gaddafi, they'd have more freedoms. They were deeply enslaved after that. It was horrific for them.
Oh, you know, people in the West don't realize how generous Gaddafi was. Most of the other oil states, handful at the top get all the money, and not that much of it goes down through the ranks. In Libya, you're considered a student even in your 30s. You're still a kid.
Mm.
You get a huge amount of money for marrying, and you got more money from the state for having children. You'd get your car, your apartment, things like that. Uh, Gaddafi was building some amazing stuff. All of his gold, he had 350 billion of gold stuffed away because he wanted to start his own currency for Africa. And Saif was doing the negotiating with the Rothschild family and the banks up in London to create a African dinar backed by gold. And Gaddafi built this inland waterway. He built literally a river, a man-made river from central Libya out in the middle of the desert, all the way out to the ocean. It's one of the wonders of mankind. And all of that water was going to be used to irrigate the desert there. And if you looked at the projections of where they were going with it, 50 years in the future, you'd have just an amazing, very fruitful area along that path with this waterway built. As it ended up being things that they planned to do to make Libya flourish, all went in the tank. So it's as the things come out about all the alliances, all of the objectives of the people behind the scenes, these globalista, trying to reshape the world for their benefit. And then you come back to our elections here in the States and the immigration. The intent was that America is a problem for these globalista, and they needed to essentially take us off the rails. They were going to do that with this overloading of our economy with all these immigrants and our services, our retirements, things like that. And then we would be ready to accept other reforms that they were going to give us. And that's what this whole thing is about with the immigrants, is just flooding America with the immigrants who don't have a place to fit in directly. They're constantly hiding. They're working under the table, and it breaks the back of the American system. Our system is made with all these choke points that funnel cash into the machine to keep the machine, the business, the politics of America working. The taxes that people pay for employment, for FET taxes for tires on the road that keep the roads working, that keep the bus system working, things like that. And as you overload in certain areas, our system, they don't work anymore. It starts to unravel society. It's like if you have a scooter, I had one of my suit jackets, a fairly pricey jacket, and a seam came out. No biggie. Took it to the seamstress, and she fixed it $25, and you couldn't tell that anything was wrong. But what if it had been frayed, seriously somewhere? You weren't going to just sew up a seam. The jacket starts to become not fixable. It starts to come unraveled, and it was kind of a thicker cloth, and you'd see like the old guys back in the 20s and 30s, they'd have a patch on the elbow of their jackets where they get worn threadbare. You can do that, but it still looks fun are different. And once things truly begin unraveled, which is what has been happening to America, it reaches a point where you cannot repair it. And that's this place in the fight that I think that we're in right now.
Yeah. Now, somebody posted in the chat that Huma Abedin and Alex Soros are going to be married on June 14th in the Hamptons. And I looked it up, and that's true. That's crazy, right?
Yeah. Well,
that they always have to do
think about
something
it, from you got Trump's birthday is the same day, the 14th, and that's when the big military parade is there in Washington D.C. And by the way, the military parade's been scheduled for a very long time. There's only some, people schedule stuff conflicting all the time, but it does seem a bit, I don't know that convenient is it, but there is this competition on that date for the world's attention. And, and then again, it's Huma. Oh my gosh, all the drama around hers. Remember her first husband, and all the drama with the computer and the pornography, child pornography, and stuff like that. So, Wiener. So all of that gets raised back up again. And by the way, Huma is not safe. I remember when Jackie Kennedy married Onassis, and many people were, well, was it for love or not? Was it just for protection? He was, one of the wealthier men in the world. And in her position, she didn't feel that she could protect her family without that wealth available to her and security available to her. And so while there was, love involved, then again, there was also a calculating decision. Huma is in a similar condition, having been an aide to Hillary. Hillary is going down hard, and we're very close to that. Huma is caught in that vortex, and I don't think she can escape that. There's things that happened, and she was in the room, participated. She will not skate free of this. She's hoping that with the money and everything else with Alexander, that maybe she does skate free. Alexander himself, remember, George Soros, and this goes to the theme I started the whole show with. George Soros is a creation of British MI6. His, the vast majority of his wealth was made betting against the British pound and countries within the Commonwealth on their currencies with knowledge from the inside, allegedly said for legal purposes. And so,
and that's how these billionaires are made, so they can be used. Epstein, P. Diddy, all these people are made billionaires.
That's exactly right. I mean, think about this. I've mentioned it lots of times, but it bears repeating. Zuckerberg, one of the wealthiest people on the planet, Facebook, $1 trillion company plus, not just millions or billions, $1 trillion operation. So when you think about that, and yet he didn't create anything. He did not create Facebook. Facebook was called LifeLog. It was a 5-year operation over at DARPA. It was budgeted at $100 million a year for development. Most businesses, can you afford to put out $100 million a year just to develop something? And in the DARPA system, you have access to the best of the best, the brightest of the brightest, and they just add lines in a ledger over it. The reality is, if you tried to create Facebook in the private industry world, it would probably cost you about $1 billion a year, not $100 million. It would have been a $5 billion project. When it was done, the day that the program switched from a DARPA developmental program to an applied program was February 4th, 2004. which is breaking the 8 number. It's an occult number that they just love. It's double 8. And 8 has to do with money. It's a new day, but it's also anything marked with an 8 is profitable in the occult. And so, go ask any of the numbers ladies, they'll tell you. So the day that it was incorporated, the people involved knew that they were going to move much of the world into this social media operation. It was a multi-billion-dollar project day one. Who had the authority and the power to gift that to Zuckerberg? Zuckerberg didn't create it. That's a bullshit lie. And by the way, so in other words, you have somebody out of the military-industrial think tank spy system, if you will. It was a project to suck much of the world into this system of social media for tracking purposes. But even there, then the Winklevoss twins allegedly had come up with the idea there at Harvard also for this thing and had built it out under contract to Zuckerberg. A complete fabrication, my opinion, said for legal purposes. If Zuckerberg didn't create it, how did the Winklevoss twins have anything to do with creating Facebook? If it was made over at DARPA, how can the Winklevoss twins claim that they need to be paid money? Oh, and then by the way, what do they do with their money? I know this is repetitive for some of your crowd, but we got a lot of new people here. Think about it again. The Winklevoss twins go out and invest in Bitcoin, another DARPA operation. They needed money to build out the systems to keep the Bitcoin and digital currency going. So the Winklevoss twins get money sucked off of Facebook in a supposed lawsuit. Remember how Zuckerberg was so, during the whole trial in the movie, they show it even, he's completely disconnected from the whole thing. He's just doing time. Why? Because he knew what the outcome was. They were just putting on a show. Of course he was distracted. It was just a show for legal purposes to go suck some money out of one operation. It was like a card game. 21, you get handed twin aces. Well, let's double down, split the bet. And that's what they did. They split the bet, bled some money off of Facebook and used it for their digital currency stuff. So, and by the way, those people that think you're safe in Bitcoin, there's a bounty out there right now on the source code for Bitcoin in the quantum computing world. Now, maybe in the spy versus spy world, maybe nobody in the private sector has quite enough computing power to break that. But the quantum computing, I don't like the term. It's actually something else, but that's the term that's been applied as quantum.
I mean, I was going to ask you about economics and building wealth and so forth, and I think you just helped a lot of that right there. Now we have Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg went to Harvard. Now we have President Trump is going after Harvard. Is there some kind of thread that's happening there for maybe?
Well, because let me just say this. Again, and Gates didn't finish school, neither did Zuckerberg. Mm-hmm. You have a lot of people going into places all over the world that, they get that. It's like checking a box in their resume, and then they go off and do other stuff. They get tapped for other purposes. I think it's hard to deny that there's a part there. Remember, supposedly Obama went to Harvard and led the Harvard Law Review stuff.
And Clinton, yeah.
And Clinton.
Wow.
Obama.
I think we're disclosing something here. I never even put all these together. Good job. Gosh.
Well, think about this. There's a certain camaraderie. We have it in special services types of things. But they have it within the university system. And remember, Obama supposedly went to Columbia University the major in political science. Okay, well, it was a 4-year degree. Michael Medved, the radio host, super guy, was on for many, many, many years. Also did the movie previews and like that. But Michael Medved attended Columbia the exact same years as Obama did, allegedly. There was only, I think, 29 students in that major at the time. And they all knew each other because they all had to study together. It was a very tight group taking the political science. They all went to the same classes. Michael Medved says in 4 years, he never, ever once met Obama. And none of the other students, he knows them all, has ever met Obama or saw him on campus. Yet they have pictures of him, on the campus and visiting grandma, grandpa, and all sorts of other stuff, all fabricated. Who was in charge of false histories over at CIA? Brennan in that time period.
Wow. Right.
Brennan, who became chief of station in Saudi Arabia. And then, by the way, who had his Marxist communist card, just like Karen Bass, the mayor out in L.A. Okay.
Wow.
You have people in political positions. I have a very strong contact, many, many years in the political world. Father was a very senior politician. And he worked in the intelligence services, tracking money and like that, pretty heady stuff. And one day we met for lunch on something, and this is a couple decades ago. And he pops it on me that actually, when I needed him for something, he wasn't going to be available. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's explaining to me that he's decided to take the money. His wife's tired of him being gone continuously. He's got younger kids, and he's going to run for U.S. Senate. And he's been offered, and this was serious money. I think it was $5 million at the time to run for the U.S. Senate. And I'm like, why don't you wait 10 years? You're still young enough. You could do that later, but we're right in the middle of trying to stop a war. And he's, doing whatever. He eventually changed his mind and didn't do it. But he had been offered the money with a couple other people at the same time to run for these political offices out of the intelligence agencies, out of the intelligence world. So I look at the bios on a lot of these people that have gotten into high office, and I'm like, corn. For those that don't know, corn, we send guys to learn how to be spies to the farm. And from the various agencies, when they're done being trained, they're a farm product. Well, what's the biggest farm product in America? Corn.
Brilliant. I love it.
So, yeah. Anyway, but no, I don't think that people should remember, within this audience especially, Trump was invited to run. Who invited him? Trump has said 200 generals. So it's not just Trump. You don't see the other hand behind the scenes working with him to help him. And what are they fighting? They're fighting within the military, within the various intelligence agencies, within the policing agencies for control of America. And they just see Trump alone and they think he's alone. That's just not true. There's a method to the madness, if you will, to recapture control of America from all of these monsters that have stolen control in America through their hidden hand of influence to, mutually self-promote. And then they use their money. Look at Zuckerberg. We mentioned that a minute ago. I've mentioned this many times before, but this is going to become more and more relevant as the summer wears on. Who donated $500 million for all the drop boxes for the election in 2020? Zuckerberg. during a pandemic. Hello, Gates and China, and this plan within the military industrial system to have a virus that would make it so you have to vote remotely and lay the groundwork to just vote from your cell phone, like you were ever going to get a safe again if they allowed the vote to go to your cell phone. The war is on. That's why even with what Trump's doing, we're going the exact opposite direction. If you don't want an AI to manage how the votes are done, counties across the country, and control who your president and all of your congressional members are, and how your money's spent, and how your life's being organized, you have to get away from the machines. So that's why my team put together the proposal for the hand count paper ballot, precincts of 1,500 or less, counted where cast, no votes being transported in the trunk of the police car, the fire truck, or Granny's knitting basket. The votes are counted right there at the precinct where they're cast. Remember Tulsi Gabbard here a month ago? She's in a cabinet meeting. She is the director of national intelligence, the head of all the intelligence agencies over at Homeland Security. There's 16 intelligence agencies: NSA, CIA, FBI, DEA, Homeland Security, National Reconnaissance Office, NRO. All these different agencies. She sits at the head of the whole operation, Tulsi Gabbard. And she's sitting in the cabinet meeting with President Trump and the other cabinet members. And she said the wildest thing. She said, it's just like you said, Mr. President. Hey, 1 second. Can I get a brevet? And I'll be in for a few minutes. Okay, thanks.
Do you do regular milk?
No, the half and half, please. Yeah, thanks. Tulsi Gabbard says the president, it's just like you said, Mr. President. We're going to have to go to a hand count paper ballot. So the president has already briefed his cabinet at some point prior to this, we're going to a hand count paper ballot. Did he say that to the American people? Well, as a matter of fact, he has. He's talked about the fact that we're going to have to change our voting system, go to a hand count paper ballot. But he's clearly said that to his cabinet. And Tulsi repeated that. Why? Because Tulsi said this also, and I've told your audience this multiple times. And by the way, this happened immediately after members of Tulsi's team spent 3.5 days with the people that were brought to America and are in protective custody in the United States right now, pouring their guts out about how they stole 2020, the intricate details.
Wow.
They're Venezuelans. They did it from Serbia, from Dominion headquarters, Dominion Vote Systems headquarters in Serbia. Wait a second. We have Dominion machines all through America. Their world headquarters is where? A country where Russia is kind of running the country behind the scenes? Serbia? Are you kidding me? And there was Chinese spy masters running the people there in Serbia, and Cuban guards, Cuban intelligence officers there in Serbia running the vote. So when Tulsi Gabbard said that to the president, she said, we now have proof of a stolen election. Her staff had just come out of 3.5 days of briefings. Tulsi herself had a half-day soup to nuts summary briefing the day before and came into that cabinet meeting and says, it's just like you said, Mr. President. We now have proof of a stolen election. We're going to have to go to a hand count paper ballot. That happened a month ago. So where do you think this is going? And if you have people who got into office through various types of fraud, a la Karen Bass, is she there lawfully with the LA votes. You know, LA County is the largest county in America, and they use they call it a different name, like they created this voting machine out of thin air. It's based on the Smartmatic system. The Smartmatic system is the vote system that the Philippines outlawed because of all the fraud going on down there, and that was several years ago. So LA County's using a system that the Philippines found out you can't trust the vote in. It's too easy to manipulate. What the hell's going on there? And then you got Karen Bass in there. And by the way, who created these vote systems that can be manipulated this way? Are we talking about three-letter agencies again? Yes. That's why we're at war. To take back elections for America. You know, the most important thing Trump is going to have done his entire time in public office is he's going to, because of the way the elections have been stolen, he's going to, by executive order, it's the only way it can be done, order hand count paper ballots for all elections involving federal offices moving forward. That's going to make it so that the states have to go to hand count paper ballot for the rest of the down ballot elections. Who's going to want to do electronic voting when you find out that Cuba, Venezuela, Chinese intelligence on Russian soil flipped your election 2020, 2022. They're having a huge fight over in South Korea right now. Huge over the election situation. China's all through that. We're sifting troops into South Korea right now since Trump got into office to be ready to stabilize our basing there in case things come completely off the rails. It's a big deal.
Yeah, they're close to civil war over there for this. It's pretty crazy. That's bad. I love that South Koreans are really good people, but they're being manipulated just like we are here in the United States.
Well, and remember when the supposed coup happened, when he nationalized everything for a period of time, put the country under a national lockdown, whatever you call it, and then went into the vote center to try and get a hold of those servers. They didn't find the right servers. They got bad information internally. And so then they called it off. And then the president was impeached and several people around him. And that was based on what we would term a midterm election. Now they just had the rest of their election here a few weeks ago. And we had observers here from the country, from the United States over there watching it, and all sorts of wrong going on there. So, there's a fight to outer space going on there. And South Korea, we're far from done in South Korea. Fights on.
Yeah, at this point, the North and South should have been reunited, but gosh, it was really fighting that hard.
Well, if you look out across the world, these globalista, if you will, that have a plan to depopulate the world. They only want 500 million people on the whole planet. And they want to take it down. That if you look at the numbers, essentially the way they're saying it, they want 13 out of 14 people dead. And start over. Well, with communist China, in China's history over the last couple thousand years, they've taken down the population of China with their internal wars on a couple of occasions by 90% plus. They literally wiped out everybody except a few certain families, and then rebuilt the country from that. That's the model they want to use on the rest of the world. If you're not a right bloodline, if you're not, from the right family, then they just take you all out. And in fact, Obama supposed mama. She wasn't his mama. She didn't birth him. She was given him. Stanley Ann Dunham. When she was working down in Indonesia, she was part of supposedly mapping the population for social studies, if you will. They mapped all the families that were within certain family groups across Indonesia and marked them for death, for extermination, as you went from Sukarno to Suharto. It was a political thing. Depending on which stuff you look at, somewhere between 1 million and 5 million people were purged, killed, murdered in Indonesia in the mid 60s. And that mapping operation to decide who dies, that Dunham was involved there in Indonesia. And that was a cover. She worked for USAID in the church committee hearings in the mid 70s, when all the family jewels of CIA were exposed, and Frank Church had these hearings about the drugs being put on people without their knowledge from CIA, and all of the horrible things. During that, the head of the FBI or the CIA at the time, Webster, I believe it was asked about USAID in Central America. And he said that every USAID employee in South America and Central America was a CIA employee. Well, you think it was any different over in Indonesia? Just because they didn't get to that in the questions, it was because they were talking about South America and the banana republics at the time. That was the context of the conversation. So,
wow,
of course, it was
that
the
makes
same
sense
thing.
to me now, because I was in Libya, and USAID employees were like under threat, and they wanted us to help protect them, and we're like, no. But now I see why they were trying to do that. Interesting.
Well, and of course, you probably remember, they called the safe house there in Benghazi a State Department embassy. It was nothing. Bullshit. Okay. By the way, when you look out the backyard there at the safe house, which was a rental, a couple acres. With a fence all the way around it. When you look out the backyard across where they had some fruit trees across the back, the building up in the back, it's only about 350 yards behind the safe house. That was the CIA's facility, the huge warehouse there that was armed outer space. They said it was a mile from the safe house when the ambassador was attacked there. Well, it was a mile by road. You had to leave the CIA facility, drive over to the road, drive down the road, drive back over, and there was the house. As the crow flies, there's 350 yards up behind it, 3.5 football fields up behind it. Why? Because the safe house was in the shadow of the CIA's building for, safe observation to make sure everybody in there was fine. And that's why you had a sense of security there for everything that Stevens and everybody else was doing. And, what the conversation was when the Turkish consul general, an advisor to the ambassador from Turkey, shows up, in other words, another spy, showed up there to meet with Stevens in Benghazi. What the context of the conversation was, the Russians were pissed off and talking to Erdogan about the fact that people were being trained on Turkish soil in these UN refugee centers where there's no refugees, it's just arms. Supposedly it's a Red Cross type of a thing, and preparing for refugees from Syria. The whole thing was planned. They were going to blow Syria apart, and so that in those facilities, the Russians' overheads, the satellites, had caught Syrians being trained how to use gas weapons inside those UN facilities. border of Syria. And so the Russians are saying, you know, you cannot be training people to use gas weapons in Syria. You know, you guys talk about it's the red line. The Americans and NATO people are training Syrians how to use gas weapons on your facility. You know, they're out there with gas masks and clothing and are loading shells and things like that, practicing. And so when Stevens is being met there at Benghazi, that's what the Turkish consul general is telling him. You Americans cannot be training people to use gas weapons on Turkish soil. Stop it. And that was kind of this context part. And then the other thing is, and we've talked about it to your listeners again, but it bears repeating again. Red Crescent had some workers. Red Crescent's like the Muslim side of Red Cross. And they had some people, Iranian spies, if you will, who were monitoring the movements of all these Western intelligence agencies and other Mideast intelligence agencies with prepping to go to war in Syria. And so Iran, under the cover, just like we do with the Red Cross and everybody else, they send people under the Red Crescent. They go there, they're monitoring the supposed embassy, which was just a safe house where Stevens at. They put a little bomb on kind of a back fence area, just a adobe fence, and blow it up, blow a hole in it, see who responds. They wanted to see if people came out of the CIA building, came down there, etc. It was a probing attack. We got pissed, but we didn't do the dirty work. The Brits picked up those 10 Red Crescent workers, but Iran thought it was the U.S., and they thought they'd been taken up to that CIA facility behind the Benghazi safe house. So what they did is when they came back to attack down at where Stevens was at, they were expecting support to come out of that CIA facility, and then they were going to attack that facility when they were down on manpower, and they were going to break free their Red Crescent workers. They'd been asking all over town, where's our people, and in the embassies, nobody's admitting anything. So when that happened, you'll notice that about 10 days after Benghazi, after the attack, suddenly the Red Crescent workers were on a plane flying back home to Iran. Well, the Brits had them. They had them right next door. And
I want to interject, and you're absolutely right about when our manpower was lowered, because Hillary Clinton was controlling our diplomatic passports and she was restricting them. So we had low manpower during that time frame. Brilliant. Good job.
Yeah. Well, and of course you had several GRS, usually in the whole world. Our GRS guys are pretty spread out. They had 3 of them in country that they acknowledged all at the same time. Now they'd expanded their numbers under Bush 2 and diluted who they were pretty radically if you get right down to it. But again, these are a very special class of warrior. And it was pretty wild that why? Sorry, I had to. Does that affect our elections here?
So you cut out, Juan. We're not hearing you right now.
In the U.S. operations, the president, America's been being used tool all over the
All All right, guys. Looks like we're gonna get a little interference here. I'm gonna switch, do a little switcheroo here. Hopefully, we can get Juan back on. All right.
I'm doing an interview right now, but just
okay, do you want it in a mug or to-go cup?
No mug.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, we got you back. Good. So you're back in, Juan, if you want to go ahead and continue. Find out if you hear me. Juan, can you hear me? So that little piece that we were talking about with Benghazi, Hillary Clinton had restricted the GRS agents were basically security for CIA personnel when they're gathering information. She had, because she was head of the State Department, we got our diplomatic passports through the State Department. Never had any problems with that before. When Hillary Clinton came in, she started restricting our diplomatic passports. So we had very few people downrange to do protection details. So that's what we were talking about a little bit of that. That's I think that's one of the reasons why Benghazi went down. Not enough personnel protection down there. Mine, can you hear us? Still have some internet issues. I'm gonna try another.
Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Try and switch the internet one more time. See if that'll work. How about now, Juan? Juanito. So obviously, I think we started talking about some very sensitive stuff there, and they didn't like that. So they're restricting Juan being able to talk. And so I've switched. I have like 3 different ways I can switch my internet because they do this all the time. And I've tried all 3 of them now. So they're on to me, and on to Juan signal wise. So it's probably why I don't know if we were going to get this. Yeah, let him eat. Let's come back. It's pretty good. So I don't know. We'll maybe.
He's coming back in, dialing out, coming back in.
Okay, my producer said he's dialing out, coming back in, so we'll hold here. All right. Hey, Juan, how yours now? That's just strange. Your Juan's so perfect.
Oh my God. Are they after it?
Yeah, I've switched it around a few times, and I think we're good right now, though.
All right. Well, I mean, it sounded to me like maybe the bad guys were messing with us or something. So
yeah,
that
that's
didn't change
it.
anything. So
They didn't like what we were talking about. So
but
we'll just,
I mean,
go back to LA, I guess. I don't know.
Well, that's where I was headed back to. I was headed back to,
Mm-hmm.
with all the people pushed into the country, various places, and then wanting to do these fights.
Right.
After the LA thing started, I had one of my guys ask me, where do you think will be next? I said, Chicago. He says, well, there's nothing going on in Chicago yet. I said, well, there will be. I mean, that's the center of evil of what's going on. Sure, that Chicago, feel so right, so predictable. So we're in a different kind of fight than most people realize. They think it's just about the poor families that are caught up in this from an immigration standpoint, and they're spread out all over the country, and they got to leave and come back. They're cannon fodder in somebody
Yep.
else's war. Don't be mad at us. Be mad at the people that were using you to, essentially take down, America. And
Right.
we'll bring a lot of these people back, but they'll come back through the front door. When they do, they won't be looking over their shoulder, because they don't have a legal basis for being here. And their children won't be without a history that they can use. They'll have to come back to the front door. We'll work with them. We love immigrants. We're gonna need those people out in the future. We got all sorts of important things to do, but they got to come through the front door. That's the way the rules are.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's like the Black Lives Matter. They, or the brown shirts or whoever's the useful idiot at the moment. Unfortunately, these people are going to be used like that.
Well, and plus, I will tell you this: when you look at the people coming in on technology side, I read an interesting article the other day, and I think the author was right on the cash. Um, we bring in all the really smart students under these agreements to work for our high-tech companies. And so we were grabbing them out of China and India and, all these other places. And they're actually pretty smart people. They're coming up with all sorts of innovation. What happened is that the brain trust was being centralized here in the U.S. and hurting these other countries. Now we're sending those people back. It's going to hurt us for a period of time. And those other countries have that brain trust. Can they capitalize on it, though? Silicon Valley, you want to go back into this whole thing. Dianne Feinstein. What's Dianne Feinstein's history? She was recruited. She was pumped up through the ranks. She was freaking CIA. That's
Wow.
how that whole thing happened. And why? Because within her area was this emerging Silicon Valley to concentrate all of that technology in one area, and this international zone, in that Silicon Valley area. And that was, part of the genius of America, was having that concentrated brain trust in that area to develop the computer program, software, everything else. Before Seattle picked it up with Gates and all that crowd. A very coordinated effort, much more coordinated than people realize, including with the university system. And so you've got intelligence agencies everywhere behind the scenes on all of this stuff, including the immigration.
Hmm. Yeah, Feinstein.
Go ahead.
It's the way they took her out, I guess. Because they always have to take them out if they're no longer useful. Like we talked about useful idiots, but she went out with like shingles, encephalitis, all kind of crazy stuff. How much of that was stuff they planted in her was real or what, remains to be seen, or maybe we never will know. But that's pretty tragic the way a lot of these people work for these, deep state, this mafia, I guess. And then they just use them and abuse them at the end.
Well, if you think about it, it is the devil himself.
Yeah.
At the instant you're no longer useful, you, and he's on that. These people think that they're going to rule and reign in hell. They make a deal with the devil. We laugh about it, but people continue to make these Faustian deals. And they think somehow they're going to be unique. They're going to be the one that gets to work with the devil himself and, rule and reign in hell with the devil himself. Bullshit. When he's done with you, you're just trampled and gone. His demons, you're a plaything for his demons. That's the way you have to view this going into the intelligence world also. You get in there, you do a deal with the devil. It's very hard to extricate yourself because at that point, now you've moved from an asset to a liability. You can't have liabilities running around loose. And, the few guys that make it usually have some kind of an insurance plan.
Yeah, I can vouch that. It's very difficult to lead the CIA. They try to destroy you like they did me, your credibility and everything, and try and take away all your money, which they did. And but we came back better. But it is very, very tragic when you start to work for these groups and you don't realize at first that you're working for evil, and then once you realize that, you're trying to get out, and when you finally do, they're still going to come after you. It doesn't matter that you didn't realize it.
Well, if I take Stevens, for example, out there in Benghazi.
Sure.
He was the expert on Iranian nuclear systems. He was the expert on the proliferation side and all that. He was an Iran expert. He wanted to switch into a more legitimate side. Become a ambassador to one of the big countries like that. He'd been actually taking courses and preparing to do that, to switch out of the covert world into the overt world very precisely. And it's hard to do. With the people that are successful at it, they have to make their bones in a certain way. And imagine my friend, if he had gone ahead and run for the Senate position he was going to run for. You think he'd be his own man in the Senate? You think that when he got there with that $5 million they were offering him, that he would have been his own man? That's the conversations I had with him. Are you serious? You think that your life's going to be easy, no problem, moving forward? No, you're going to be owned, bought, and controlled, and there's always going to be something held over you in the background. It's the way it is. There's lots of ways to Epstein somebody, okay? Honeypots, blackmail, career. Yeah, when you're CIA like you were, you don't have a credit card in your own name. You don't have, your history. Who are you going to go apply for the job for? Who's going to back you up? I remember when Terry Reid was trying to get back in touch with Ollie North on something. And, he's calling the number over there, and they don't have anybody at that number, right? Gone. All his connections have vaporized. Yeah. Soon gone. So who are you going to call for a reference? You going to call Barry? Yeah, I've got a lot of piloting. I got all this flight time. Where's it logged at? His even his airplane. They stole his airplane. And they find it. When they finally find it, it's in a building at the airport with a bunch of C4, like he's getting set up to be, bad guy. That was all Ollie North,
Wow.
So, by the way, again, Ollie was doing it at the White House when unraveled. He's burning all everything up. They shredded. The only thing they didn't burn up was the bank account information. That's what Fawn Hall took out in her boots. So they could bank accounts where they'd stuff money all over the place. And the access codes and things like that. The rest of it they were shredding. If Ollie hadn't shredded all the basement of the White House, you would never have gotten Bush in the White House. That's 12 years of Bushes in the White House that would never have happened, ever, if North hadn't shredded the information in the basement of the White House that let the blame go to Reagan, because Bush was behind all that.
Oh, wow.
And by the way, where was Bush? Where was Bush before he became vice president? He was head of CIA. Oh, we're going to put a businessman in charge of CIA and get things sorted out after the church committee hearings. We're going to stop all this mischief at the CIA and go back to being an intelligence gathering agency instead of coups to take down presidencies and stuff. You know, when Kennedy was assassinated, Truman was still alive. And Truman had created the CIA. And Truman said, did we just see a takedown of a leader like what we've had in South America in some kind of a coup by our own people? Think about that. They all understood what was going on. They understood this was out of control. And even now, with what Trump's doing, people lose perspective on what's going on. Even now, with what Trump's doing, we are taking down the people that stole control of America from behind the scenes, behind the curtain. We're taking down these wizards that have stolen control of America for their own purposes, including flooding America with a whole bunch of people to take it off the rails. That's what we're doing. So those people are cannon fodder. They're somebody else's thing. We're actually, and it's going to sound wild to say this. I know this. I know people are going to push back against it, but if you take a deep breath, one of the most beautiful things that we can do for people that have come here to America, tried to build a life, want to be here, is to force them to go back out of the country and apply to come in legally through the front door. We are going to have very generous immigration policies through the front door for those people that went out. If you get picked up in the country and sent out, you can't come back in. That's your motivation, self-deport. You're out for the rest of your life. If you leave right now under your own power and go home, apply to come back in, we're going to bring in a whole crowd, a whole flood of these people that have been Americanized and want to come back in through the front door. And what's beautiful about it is when they get here, they don't look over their shoulder. Their kids don't look over their shoulder. They have a life and a retirement and a plan, and they actually get to live the American dream the right way. They don't have to look over their shoulder. The way that they're here, the way these people pushed them in here and promised them everything, and just like back in Reagan, where we're going to give them a path forward for citizenship, in spite of the fact that they started out lawlessly, not happening. We already tried that, didn't work. When they do come back in the right way, those people that do that are going to have a much richer life. They're going to be able to hold their head up. And, the ones that still want Mexico and America, go home and stay home. The ones that want to come here and be American and live the American way, it's the only country in the world where you can come from anywhere in the world and become an American. You can't go to Germany and become a German. You can become a German citizen, but you can't become a German. America, you can come from anywhere in the world, become a citizen, you're an American. As much American as anything else here. It's an amazing thing.
Really is. But it's really not about the immigration. It's more about taking over America and turning it into a communist dictatorship, don't you think?
Well, or beyond that, destroying what makes America America. Again, if Karen Bass doesn't hide that she'd go down and listen to Fidel Castro with all of his speeches and Raul Castro, and she thought the Cuban way was the best way for the world. Does anybody in your audience here actually want to be Cuba? But Karen Bass wants Cuba and America. She thinks their system is perfect. It's amazing. And then she's in the school system, teaching that in the school system before she came to mayor. How does somebody get in that position? Look at Obama. He has the same mentality, fundamentally change America. Well, he did. Start with the Mideast. His first foreign trip outside the United States when he became president was to Egypt and talked about a fundamental transformation of the Middle East. Well, they did. They tried to reshape it with the Arab Spring, leading all the way to a war in Syria, where they were going to break Syria up into 3 countries and run a pipeline from Saudi Arabia to Europe. And what was the pipeline? Because you got all the refineries. You have to think geopolitically. Saudi Arabia has a bunch of oil, but the problem is they damaged their oil well system by pumping seawater in to get more oil out back in the 80s under Reagan when we took down the Soviet Union to bring down oil prices to break the back of the Soviet Union. A geopolitical military industrial play, war by another means. That damage to their oil well system wasn't ever really recovered from. So they got to get oil from other places. Why? Because they have all the refineries there. It's not just that Saudi Arabia has oil, it has huge refineries that can process the oil. So you go take over Libya, get their oil, which is higher quality oil, run it in pipelines over to Saudi Arabia and refine it. No use building the refineries again. You just bring the oil to the refineries and from other countries in the area, Sudan and things like that. Then you run the processed refined oil out through pipelines. Well, how are you going to get it to Europe? You can do it with tankers, you can do it with pipelines. They wanted to do it with pipelines. Well, you got Syria in the way. If you can get it through Syria from Saudi Arabia to Turkey, they have the pipelines from Turkey into Europe. So now you can be the oil supplier for Europe for the next 50, 100 years. How much is that worth? What's the value in being the energy supplier to Europe for the next 50 or 100 years? You're guaranteeing your place in history for those families that think intergenerationally, wealth that's intergenerational wealth. They're looking at the world like a chessboard and making the next plays, not for the next 5 or 10 years, but for the next 100 years. That's the game that we're caught up in. And then they run the intelligence agencies from these various countries like their own private security network. So FBI, CIA, NSA, you got MI6, MI5, GCHQ. Same thing with Germany and Israel and France. All these intelligence agencies for these very wealthy families working together to make sure they own the future. It's like the movie Chinatown, one of the most important lines in the whole thing. And the rich guy is asked, why are you doing this? Why are you taking over the water supply for LA? You're not wealthy enough already. What are you going to buy? You're an old man. What are you going to buy that you don't already have? And he responds, the future. I'm buying the future, Mr. Getz. Okay? It's not about, at a certain point, it's not about money or wealth. It's about power and keeping it in the family. As twisted and perverted as the family was. That's the devil himself. That's the fight that we're really in, is the devil's trying to own what's the most important commodity on planet Earth besides your life energy. Energy itself. The world runs on energy. Right now you have the choke point of oil and gas. Shortly we're going to switch that into a variation on the way we do the nuclear power and then go to the other systems beyond. Why not just go straight to the other systems? Because it is too disruptive. You have to do these intermediate stages. And it's been gamed out. And you got a bunch of smart Alecs that think they know better. Now, when you game it out, there's a certain process that works, and there's other processes that don't work. So we do an intermediate step. How many years does it take? About 50. So it could be 100. It won't be much shorter than 50. It's the way it's gamed out. So we're moving towards the future, and is it a future of a type that President Trump and the people behind him are envisioning, have gamed out, which gets us to something more beautiful faster? Or is it the held back system that involves killing 13 out of 14 people on planet Earth and resetting and restaging the world for this next, 1,000 years of peace that would come the way that the devil himself wants it? Uh, uh, the Trump plan, calling it Trump generically, it's really the plan of the people that are countering the coup, going all the way back to Kennedy and even before. Um, the Pike crowd, secret handshake crowd, Albert Pike, goes back for 200 years. Are we going to counter that? Yeah, that's exactly what we're countering. And that's the fight that's going on right now. Which group is going to own this? And as I've said to your audience numerous times, bears repeating, at this exact moment, it's the guys in NORAD and the Cheyenne system versus senior executive service, the crowd around Bush 1, Cheney, the shadow government. That's the fight. And their ties to the globalist circle out of England and the British Commonwealth, the largest country in the world that you don't realize is there because it's kind of hidden in all of its connections. That's the fight we're in.
Yeah, I think that we'll see some cities that are going to be lost during this time frame. What I know you've said 14. I kind of predict maybe a few more, 17 maybe. But and what level of lost are we looking at? LA, it's surviving. Trump has done a really good job with LA, and on the 14th, will a lot more protests erupt? What are your thoughts?
Well, the 14 is a pretty firm number, but we'll see. It starts out with lots of locations, well over 100, but it boils down and boils down and boils down. It's just like refining down, uh, your broth in the frying pan, right?
Right.
You're boiling off the water. It refines down to certain cities where they've created these refugee status and like that. And as we boil this down across the country, you end up with these strongholds that are pretty well defined so far. And the, conflict that you'll have there. And this takes a while to play through. Um, uh, it won't be instant. People think that this is all over, say, even this summer. Nah, it's gonna take some time to work through the gymnastics going on here, um, and it's kind of painful, obviously. Yet it is what it is. You know, you got a certain amount of heat. I could put a nuclear bomb under the frying pan. Am I bringing the water to a boil or just blowing it all up? There's a period of time for this process to play through. People around, self-centralize and fortify. Um, that process, it takes a little while. By the way, we don't want it so fast that the people, like my painter, automotive painter, he made the decision, and it was a very hard decision. Even to call me and tell me what was going on was very painful, because he's done work for me for several years. I had no idea he wasn't a citizen. Never even occurred to me.
Wow.
I'd worked for other major shops in the area and like that. And, you gotta you got to pick this particular car up. I want to finish this stuff. I don't have time. We're leaving in 60 days. We're leaving at the end of May. That's our last day. We're moving out. And so I got to have everything out by then. I'm like, that was a shock to me. And he's become a very good friend. In fact, I did help him to get some things organized for some of their transport to get down to Mexico for some of the kids. At the end of the day, he's not a bad guy. He's a beautiful guy. I've enjoyed a friendship with him for a very long time, but he wasn't here legally. And he had kids in college, the kids in the grandkids in school and things like that. But he made a very reasoned and hard decision. Like he said, look, we've been there this whole time. I got to look over my shoulder. We've been concerned about it the whole time. When is something going to happen? He pays taxes, but he doesn't file any tax forms because he doesn't want to get in trouble. So he's not even getting the full value of his work in many ways, the retirement, all the other things. His kids, struggle with some of the stuff they file within school. The grandkids born here, but parents aren't citizens. Are they going to get deported? So he just made the decision for the whole family. We're all picking up. We got the farm in Mexico. That's where we're going. And then we will apply to come back in the country legally. There you go. He wants to come back. His whole family wants to come back, but they want to be ahead of the problem, not behind. I think that was one of the gutsiest, hardest moves that you could, as a father, have to make. And he talked about how he came here, him and his wife came over the river, 30 years ago. I mean, a long time ago, and then went through the process to become citizens. They should have, but didn't do it. I think a lot of other people are going to come to that kind of a conclusion, but the dramas that we're going through right now will help them to make a choice. Are they going to dig their heels in and hope that, like what happened with Reagan, they're going to get the chance to, stay here and become citizens? Or are they going to get ahead of this, go ahead and leave the country and be early on in the process to get to come back to America legitimately through the front door? He's made a decision. I think there'll be lots of others that will make the same decision. The ones that make that kind of a decision correctly now have a better future and a smoother ride to get back into the country legitimately. The ones that dig their heels in, they're not getting back in. This push with Trump and the people around Trump is not a lightweight thing. It was well thought out. They're going to be decisive. And it's also going into the politics side. Those politicians that were involved. Look, again, I come back to Karen Bass. What is her future? What is it going to look like for her as information comes out about her connections, her past, how she got where she's at? And she won't have any control over it. Why? Because it's not about whether she says something. It's about whether people that she's never met within the system, in the machine, release records that she never thought would be released because they were hidden forever. And many others like her. I use her because she's going to be a more outed people in this whole thing, because she's mayor there in LA, in the largest county in the United States. And we're going to go to war in LA over the way that the election system has been frauded. Newsom didn't win the recall, and the flip in the election stuff, the big part of it was done there in LA County. Where do we show those records? And that he didn't win in his recall election. He was out. How's that going to look for him and everybody else? How are people in California going to feel? California is a red state.
Yeah.
So those election issues are tied directly to the immigration issue. By the way, here's another thing that most people don't have any clue of. The most corrupt agency of the federal government, the absolute most corrupt. Now, that's a tough one. Gosh, I mean, think of all the agencies that are in there. The most corrupt is the Census Department. And the deal with the census is that House districts, both state and federal, are based on the population in that district, not how many voters there are in the district, how many people are in the district. So when you move around people like chess pieces on a chessboard to, get the districting correct, et cetera, that favors certain things, they're kind of moving these populations around, including even with rents and things like that at a bigger level to attract or push. And so those districts with populations of immigrants are being flooded to get a vote that fits to put certain people in power, certain areas to have, more vote. You get rid of the immigrants who aren't citizens, and you get a real census count, and it's going to change the numbers of legislators, both U.S. and state houses, and it's going to affect the way that the districts are written for the votes, etc. It's going to be dramatic. Again, census, the most corrupt agency in the whole federal government.
Good point. Because they just use bodies. I mean, illegal alien, it's a body. So that's why they keep flooding, these blue states and districts with illegal aliens and hold them there and fight for them.
And LA's amongst the worst of the worst. So when you get an honest districting out of the census, see, there's things, I will tell you this. I mentioned the other day, how long is this immigration thing going to be going on hard and heavy? I said 10 years. And there was some pushback, no way. Yeah, it's going to be 10 years because it's not just getting the illegals out, weeding out the country. Probably real numbers about 35 million, and or 10% of our population. As you weed that out and then come back to honest districting, these censuses are done every 10 years. So we have several years till the next census. We get everybody out and allowing people to come back in through the front door. It's going to rewrite these districts. Well, a lot of those districts won't be rewritten from today, right now, today. Won't be rewritten for 7-8 years. So it's not just about even the next presidential election. We'll get the first halfway honest one here in 2028. But the effects of that still won't be fully realized till 2032. So the things that are in play right now are not for the next few months or year or two. You're changing the future of America for decades out into the future. Getting an honest vote, getting an honest census, getting honest districting. It may be uncomfortable, but I had a friend. He had a very, very expensive house drawn up on plans. He's on a hillside, beautiful views, spectacular location. He's having, like 8,000 square foot house built. They pour all the foundation work because it was on a flip a little bit, so they had to do extensive shoring up and drilling pipes into the sides of the hill and pouring concrete and everything else. And when they got all done and started building the house was off by 6 inches on the foundation. And they'd already got the house framed in probably 80% for this person caught the problem. And the deal was he had company out that was the contractor for the air conditioning heating system with all the ducting. Well, the ducting was going to go in this floor space on the bottom of the house, in this area where the gap was. In the code, the way the code was written, you had to have a certain amount of gap between the floor to ceiling, blah, blah, blah. You couldn't build the house the way it was designed with that 6 inches wrong in the foundation. They were going to have to tear down all the framing. And they had this thing framed out to the roof, but you couldn't fix it anywhere in between. They were going to literally have to pull out all the framing and start over, which was it's not just that you have to replace it, you have to tear all the old stuff out. How much damage you're going to do when you do that? All that wood, it's really not reusable. It doesn't come out easily. They were talking about $500,000 at the time just to tear out the old framing and start over. And then the contractor was arguing with the designer and the cement contractor, the general contractor. There was a huge thing. It might take 2 years. How much does that cost while you're paying for a building loan with the bank? So they went ahead and got waivers and did all sorts of things, and got the house built. Was never right after that. I just heard the other day, this was like 30 years ago, because it's a very valuable property. They're tearing the whole house down and starting over. They've put up with crap, worked around it, beautiful house all that time in between. At the end, after 30 years, nobody wants to buy it. It was cut and pasted and everything else. There was lawsuits and there was money paid and all that at the end. My friend discussed it. Here he is in his 80s, and they're tearing the house down that he, was his dream home, because somebody was off in the way they did the foundation by 6 inches.
Wow.
That's America with the immigrant situation.
Yeah.
You can cut and paste. You can do all this other stuff. We tried to do it under Reagan and path to citizenship and everything else. We had laws. We had a way of doing this that worked, and people bypassed all that. We're all this way down the road, but at some level, it.
There you go. You're back.
Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry about that. I had a call coming in. I apologize. But you understand what I'm saying. I mean, that's the conundrum America's in. But I don't think that it's. And by the way, is it the CIA's fault? Well, I mean, there's certainly players over there that are in on it. Is it the FBI or Homeland Security's fault? Well, that whole thing was created after a false flag with 9/11. All the intelligence agencies were moved under one banner. And to think about how that screwed up, remember this. Tulsi Gabbard sits in the seat as Director of National Intelligence at the head of the Homeland Security in the same position as Radcliffe was in. Radcliffe is the guy that was supposed to provide an interim report 45 days after the 2020 election on whether or not there was foreign interference in the election process, 2020. At 42 days, 3 days before the report was due, he did some national press stuff, said that he wasn't going to be able to provide Trump or Congress the interim report on whether or not there was foreign interference because several of the agency heads within the Homeland Security system were refusing to provide their investigative product. In other words, CIA NSA, FBI, CISA, were all refusing to give their information to President Trump. They were claiming that he was a Russian agent, even though we went through the whole Russia thing. They're claiming he's a Russian agent. So they're not going to give their investigative product on foreign interference to him. No interim report or anything. So 4 or 5 days gets there. And that's when Pat Byrne and General Flynn and several other people were there at the White House, conveniently President Trump. They were just doing a White House tour and supposedly just walked in on Trump and tried to get him to sign, an Insurrection Act document that Sidney Powell would draw up. There is no Insurrection Act document. You have to create it at that time. And saying that these agencies were involved in an insurrection against the Trump presidency and pulling off a coup on the election. Well, in retrospect now with what we have, that's exactly what happened. Congress voted to certify an election without the benefit of any information from Homeland Security about foreign interference. Exactly what that executive order was designed to protect us from. There was a coup. Who led the intelligence agencies? And Radcliffe should have provided an interim report, noted in it with whatever he did get, that these certain agencies refused to provide their investigative product, and then Congress could have started with hearings the next day. December 19th, they should have been subpoenaing people on an emergency situation to come in and explain themselves. Comey and Brennan and people like that. And then the current heads that were newer. Should have gone back several years. On what basis are you refusing to provide your investigative product? Didn't do that. And then the rest was history. We got Biden in there and we had 4 years, or the image of Biden, as I say it, because Biden wasn't who took the presidency. It was the image of Biden. All of that was done to America by the intelligence agencies within Homeland Security, a captured operation created after 9/11. If you remember back in the years when you were first operational, before 9/11, all of the agencies were relatively independent.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were all brought under one header at Homeland Security. It didn't become more secure, it became less secure because you had all this cross-pollination. The very thing it was supposed to do, which was make us more secure, did the opposite, made it easier to manipulate all the agencies. If you didn't have the Homeland Security system, they couldn't have worked as a team to block President Trump from getting that information concerning interference by foreign powers. They'd have been isolated within that, but they worked as a team under the Director of National Intelligence. In order to break that, Trump has Tulsi Gabbard in there right now, and we're preparing to break up what amounts to a coup over at Homeland Security and all the people behind that, exposing the election fraud out across the country, all of the strongest counties across the country, and immigration and the movement of these people that we knew where they were coming from. We knew who was pushing that is core to the election fraud. That's what Trump's doing. You get the first honest election, hand count, paper ballot, precincts of 1,500 or less. You get the right politicians in there that are actually there legitimately, not because they're holding to the people that gave them $5 million to run out of the intelligence agency. You break that part of the machine. You get an honest count over at department. 10 years from now, which sounds like it's a long ways away, but it's a couple breaths. We have America back, and the that's growing up on the Q operation as teenagers, a gaming operation, with all the greater technology that's coming, we'll have a very even shot at controlling their destiny without the globalista being able to do it remotely behind the scenes using AI to control your elections, who runs you, how your life energy is spent, the whole schmear. It's the greatest war in the history of the world, and you're watching it and you got a front row seat.
Unbelievable. Well, Juan, I know you've given us 2 great hours. I want to thank you so much for you kept everyone calm over the last 5 years. We didn't get out of control. We didn't start any wars. I think it's kind of going to be the same thing over the next several years, like we're talking about. We need to keep really good information flowing, like you bring up. I appreciate that. Everyone appreciates it. I know you go out of your way to do this, so thank you so much. And of course, if people want to contact you, they can go to where do people go?
Well, the JenniferMack.com.
Jennifer
She's got the store over there. In fact, she's got a cookie contest that she was supposed to start a couple days ago. We've been in the midst of some important stuff because I have this stuff going that's kept us restricted for the last couple days. So, but she's going to start that, I think, in the next several days. And that'll be kind of a fun thing. Got to be healthy cookies. We got some kind of cool prizes for people there too. And I haven't posted it yet. I have a letter that I put out to folks every once in a while over at gumroad.com. And so I'll be posting that probably late tonight or early sometime tomorrow concerning the situation on the metals, Tina Peters, and a number of issues. And so and I apologize thing going on that I have to be briefed on pretty quickly here. So, but Michael, I always enjoy your audience. It's a special audience. And I apologize if it sounds too repetitive because most of the stuff I've talked about, I've talked about bits and pieces here and there, but the play in the war, it warrants revisiting that because I think it's becoming clearer and clearer to people. Things that we talked about a year or 2 or 5 ago are starting to come into focus. And of all of the people that may want to talk on these things, they may just now be getting to where we were in the conversation years ago. But it becomes clearer and clearer that there's this machine in place that is not for the benefit of Americans, and we have to break that. And the pieces are becoming clearer how they're being used. It was more arguable maybe at a prior time, but it's coming into focus. So I'd rather have the right conversation than just move on to, the next one, space or, underground bases or whatever. There's a particular fight that's the center of the fight right now. And getting an honest vote so we can actually be represented by people of our choice is at the core of this whole fight for Trump. And that's the greatest thing Trump will do. Hand count, paper ballot, counted where it casts precincts of 1,500 or less. When Trump accomplishes that, that will be the centerpiece of his entire time in public office, to return the vote to the people. That's how America started. That's what our nation was founded on. Every man king of his own castle. And, retaking America starts with the vote. So, love you, bro.
Love you too, bro. Thanks a lot. And thanks for everybody joining us, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yep. Sounds good. See you, folks.